All right, Shalom. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachakodash. I want to give double honors to our apostles and our elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessing and many salutations to you, elect Akim, across the four winds of this earth, pushing this word in sincerity and in truth. I'm the brother Sha'ar from the Great Millstone Dallas camp, coming at you all with another lesson through the Spirit. Lord willing, it's edifying. All right, and this lesson here is going to be based on 2nd Esdras, the 14th chapter. All right, as it touches up on the earth being divided into 12 parts. Okay, and within this lesson, I'm going to go into that and break this down. Okay, and Lord's will is edifying. Okay, and just a brief abridgment before I continue to read this here in 2nd Esdras 14. When you go into what was taking place, the Lord had appeared to Ezra in the same fashion that he appeared to Moses, all right, in the form of that burning bush. And when you read Ezra received a lot of deep revelation, and this is one of them. And when you read this here, it clearly shows you, okay, that we are literally at the very end. When you read this here in 2nd Esdras 14, the Lord literally gave us, all right, how should I put this? I don't want to say a chart, but he literally gave us a huge clue right here. That's what I'm going to say. He literally gave us a huge clue right here to show us how close we are at the end. Okay, we see these plagues taking place on earth. COVID-19 is a plague. Okay, this Saharan dust is a plague. Now all of a sudden they found a new plague. I believe it's a brain eating amoeba. All right, that was found in Florida. This could very well possibly be another plague. And we understand that there's going to be plagues that's going to hit Mystery Babylon, which we understand is America according to the scriptures. There's plagues that's going to hit this place just like plagues hit ancient Egypt. All right. And again, the reason why these plagues are taking place because we are so close to the end. So when you read this here in 2nd Esdras, the 14th chapter, which I'm going to read, this here is an indicator which shows us how close to the end we very are. All right. So this is the book of 2nd Esdras, the 14th chapter. And I'm going to start at verse 10. It says, "For the world has lost its youth, and the times begin to wax old." Okay, now mind you, again, this is what the Lord is telling Ezra. All right. And when you go into the time span, when you look at when the prophet Ezra lived, the prophet Ezra had lived, all right, under the Persians and the Medes, the Medo-Persian Empire. Okay, and the Medo-Persian Empire was live in action, all right, in the height of their power around I'll go to say early 500, late 400s BC. Okay, that's when they were at the height of their power. So this is roughly 2,400 years ago when you read this here. So 2,400 years ago. Okay, it says, "For the world had lost its youth." So if the world lost its youth 2,400 years ago, imagine how much youth is lost today here in 2020. All right, the year 2020 AD. Again, this was roughly 2,400 years ago. Okay, so let's continue to read this here. It says, "And the times begin to wax old." Okay, so he's clearly telling Ezra, hey, the earth is losing its youth. Everything's getting old. All right, the time is at hand. The time is nigh. Okay, so it says in verse 11, "For the world is divided into 12 parts." Now, when you go into this, it's not dividing the earth as in distance. When you go into those parts, these parts are likened to units of time. Okay. Like, for example, when you go into the creation story, when you read that in Genesis, okay, it says the earth was created in 7 days. Okay. But for those of y'all who don't understand, that day is not a literal day to the eyes of the Lord. It was a 1,000-year period. Salakia, the earth was created in 6 days. All right. And on the 7th, the Most High, the Elohim rested. Okay, and when you go in again into a day is a span of 1,000 years. I'm sorry. 1,000 years. Okay, so how can we prove that? Bear with me one sec. All right. This is Second Peter. This is Second Peter chapter 3, verse 8. It says, "But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day with the Lord is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day." Okay, so when the Lord had created the earth, in those 6 days he had created, and on the seventh day he rested. Okay, this isn't a literal day that it's talking about, but this day is likened to 1,000 years. So the creation story, it really was a 7,000 year period. Okay, 6,000 years of actually creating, and 1,000 year of rest. Okay, so that's already 7,000 years of the earth's existence. All right, and right after that period of time, okay, you had Adam, his children living. All right, going into Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, the 12 tribes. Okay, when you look at existence right now, scientists will tell you that the earth is billions of years old, when that's false. Okay, if you look at according to how the Lord measures it, okay, the earth is only roughly almost 12,000 years old right now. And he's telling you right here, when you read this in 2 Esdras 14, he's telling you the earth is divided into 12 parts. Okay, so he's clearly telling you, all right, the earth is divided into 12,000 years. One part individually means 1,000 years. Okay, one part means 1,000 years. So when you continue to read this here in 2 Esdras 14, it says, "For the world is divided into 12 parts, and the 10th parts of it are gone already, and a half of the 10th part." So 2,400 years ago, when Ezra was on the scene, the 10th part had already passed, meaning 10,000 years of the earth's existence had already passed. He's clearly telling you right here that literally us in this material world right here is only a 12,000 year period. It's only a 12,000 year period where we're going to exist on this current world right now. Okay, and after that 12th part, that's when the new kingdom's going to come. But he's telling you right here, the earth is only meant, this earth that we see here today is only meant to last for 12,000 years. Okay, and again, I'm saying this current earth that we see. All right, the dominion that we see, everything we see under the sun, being in this flesh. Okay, it's only meant for 12,000 years. Okay, and then he said the 10th part had already passed. All right, and when is this 10th part, this 10,000 year period already passed? That was 2,400 years ago. Okay, this is around the time of the Persians and the Medes. And then when you continue to read this here, it says, "And a half of the 10th part." Okay, so this is 10,500 years that was already gone 2,500 years ago. All right, and if we understand that 1,000 years represents a part, okay, and what's 1,000 years after that? All right, you have roughly around 600 AD. I believe that's 1,000 years after 400 or some change BC. Okay, and when you really go into that, Jake is ruling around that time period, but Jake only ruled for a small season. Okay, before Esau started ruling again, because around the time of the Dark Ages, all right, I'm sorry, I should say the Renaissance. After the Dark Ages, you had Esau, Edom ruling again. Okay, and this is roughly around the late 1300s to early 1400s. And something to factor in as well, when you look at it, ever since this devil's been in power, starting with the Greeks, all right, he's changed times and laws. All right, that's where you read it in the book of Daniel, the 7th chapter and the 25th verse. All right, he's changed times, he's changed laws. Even around the time of the Romans, all right, you had what's called the Julian calendar, which consisted of 8 days instead of the 7-day Gregorian calendar that's followed right now. In the way that we measure time back in the ancient world, days, months, and years, as you read it in Genesis 1 and 14, he had used the sun and the moon, all right, and he had given us the sun and the moon to be able to discern between time periods. Okay, and this devil doesn't do that. This devil doesn't do that at all. So who knows where the hell we are right now? One thing we do know is that we're at the very, very end of it. Okay, we're at the very end, man. Okay, so don't let that fool you, because if you really look at how Esau measures times, it would be around 13 or 14 parts, or around 13 parts. But the scriptures say 12 parts. Okay, so this is just another indicator which shows you how close we are to the end. And something else to factor in, you have this devil who has his own, a doomsday clock. Okay? And when you look at a doomsday clock, it's no different than a regular clock. Starts at 1, goes to 2, and jumps all the way to 12. Just like a normal clock. But when you go into the doomsday clock, they'll move it up and they'll move it down depending on the current events that's taking place, what's happening. Okay, and when you look at Esau's doomsday clock, we're a few seconds away from 12 o'clock. So the spirit was put on this devil to even give you a sign of his own demise. He even knows his demise is coming up. That's why he's going through these lengths and these extreme measures, all right, of implementing his beast system, because he knows that he has a short time. Okay, he knows he has a short time. So if 2,400 years ago, 10,500 years had already passed and the earth was only meant to be 12,000 years old, all right, before the Lord comes, where are we at right now? How do you look at it right now, 2,400 years later? We have to be closing in on that 12th part. As the scriptures say, the earth was divided into 12 parts, right? The earth was divided into 12 parts. 10.5 parts passed 2,400 years ago. 2,400 years later, all right, we got to be closing in on the 12th part. That's why we see all these things taking place. That's why you see these plagues happening. All right. Literally, wherever you go, you have to wear a mask. Just sit down and really think about that. If you have to walk in the store and wear a mask and risk getting people sick, something is horribly wrong. This isn't a sign of things to get better. This is stuff that's never happened on the planet Earth. Well, I don't want to say never happened on the planet Earth before. Okay, because back around the time of Nimrod, all right, when he had established those kingdoms, okay, the last kingdom that was established, which was Rezin, they was forced to put a yoke in their mouth to cover their mouth. Okay, and right after that had taken place, the Lord had confounded all their languages. All right, and confounded that beast system that was being erected back then. And what we're seeing right now is the beast system being re-erected. And the last phase of it is that mask over the mouth. And that's what the elder Yashawamba went into a lesson he did a few days ago. Okay, but where I'm getting at is pretty much we're at the very end of it. If we have to go through these measures of putting masks on our face, all right, watching what we touch, wherever we go places, people looking at you like you crazy just for sniffling, it shows you this is a clear indicator that we're at the very end. And when you read this here in 2nd Ezra, the 14th chapter, it's giving you literally a diagram that shows you how close we are at the end. Okay, that's why when you continue to read it here in verse 11, it says, for the world is divided into 12 parts, and the 10th parts are gone already, and a half of the 10th part. And it makes sense in the previous verse where he said the earth has lost its youth. Okay, because 10.5 parts of it had already passed. So the earth had definitely lost its youth. And verse 12 says, and there remaineth that which is after the half of the 10th part. And that's only a little piece. For example, if you look at a ruler, okay, and you put your finger on a 10.5 mark, you see all that ruler before your finger, and that's time that's already passed. And you look at that little piece at the end of the ruler, and that is the time that is left over. Okay, and again, I keep saying it, but I just want to put it in your heads. That was 2,400 years ago. Okay, so if you have a ruler, and if you want to actually do this for yourself, if you put your finger on that 10.5 mark, that 10.5 mark, all right, look at that as the time of the earth. Okay, and you look at everything to the right side of your finger. That's what was left over 2,400 years ago, though. Okay, so you go 2,400 years later, you at the end of the ruler, baby. We are literally at the end. Okay, this is the end of the world. This is the end of the current world right now. As it's written in 2nd Ezra, the 6th chapter, for Esau is the end of the world. Okay, so think of that ruler again. Okay, and at the end of that ruler, let's think about who was really ruling. Because after the Persians and the Medes ruled, that's when the Edomites first started ruling. But that's around the 11th and the 12th part, if this makes sense. Okay, so it says what? For Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. And those, when we in rulership, the earth don't got to be divided into 12 parts. The earth abideth forever. Okay, but the reason why he used this as an analogy, he was going into the period of time where the earth was going to be, I don't want to necessarily say in this state, because when the earth was created, it was meant to be created in abundance. Okay, but when sin was brought forth, and that sin was brought forth roughly around what, the fifth, sixth day, because that's when Adam was created. Okay, but pretty much when sin was brought forth, that's when death reigned. Okay, so the earth being divided into 12 parts was literally just a unit of time that the earth was going to be in this state. And after the 12th part, that's when we rule, and we're going to rule in righteousness, man. And we're very close. Okay, that's why the scriptures say in 2nd Ezra, the 9th chapter, before I continue in that, 2nd Ezra chapter 9 and 1, it says what? And he answered me and said, measure thou the time diligently in itself. And when thou seest parts of the signs pass, which I have told thee before, then thou shalt understand that is the very same time wherein the highest will begin to visit the world which he made. And we're seeing that. That's why you see, that's why there's so many more chariot sightings. And the thing about it is, Esau is actually seeing it. Heathens are seeing them now. You can't deny the fact that there's an abundance of chariot sightings taking place. All right. You can't deny the fact that we're at the very end of the world, because if you measure the time, what are you measuring? You're measuring the events that are taking place in the earth. You're measuring prophecy. You're measuring everything that you're seeing. And we have the rule, which is the scriptures, to go back to and see the things happening in the earth. And these are signs which shows us how close we are at the end. And then when you jump to 2nd Ezra, the 14th chapter, that's literally time being measured, man. And only the righteous, only the spiritual are really going to understand. Okay. But you see why this devil had taken the Apocrypha out of the Bible, man. All right. Because this devil don't want you to know that we at the very end. All right. His really main goal is to continue to move forward and kill you niggas off before this is over. And that's why this devil is going through the measures and the lengths that he's going through. And when I say you niggas, Salaki, because I ain't calling you niggas, but I'm talking about how he thinks. He looks at us as niggas. All right. His agenda is to kill off you Israelites. All right. And 2/3 of Israel is niggas. OK. But how this devil looks at it, he looks at all of us the same. OK. But these are signs which shows us how close we are at the very end. OK. So when you can jump back to 2nd Ezra, the 14th chapter, verse 13 says, now therefore set thine house in order, and reprove thy people, comfort such as them as be in trouble, and renounce corruption. Why is he saying this? Because we're at the end. We don't have time to BS. We don't have time to sit down and just be comfortable. All right, it's time to do the work. All right, it's time to do the first works, as the scriptures say, because we are getting ready to see Yahweh Shai. We're getting ready to see Yahweh Shai and the angels. Around this time next year, we could very well be in the kingdom ruling. Around this time next year. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that is the case, because, again, we don't know the hour nor the day, but we've been given a spiritual gift. We've been given the eye salve to measure the time. And measuring the time, we measure prophecies. We measure events. And again, we use the scriptures to filter things out of what's taking place. And when you use your spiritual eyes, it clearly shows you how close we are at the end. Okay. 2nd Ezra 14 and 14. Let go from the immortal thoughts, cast away the burdens of man, and put off now the weak nature. All right. And that's a shedding off this flesh, shedding off this carnality, this carnal mind that we've had. OK. And ultimately really just understanding being circumcised in our heart, being that new creature. All right. That way, when Yahweh Shai comes back, he'll find those servants doing as it's written of in Luke, the 12th chapter, the 37th verse. OK. So, again, when you read that there in 2nd Ezra, the 14th chapter, when you go into the earth divided into 12 parts, this is a unit of time, each part representing 1,000 years. That's why you read that parable in Matthew, the 20th chapter, going in to the laborers and and the pennies. And it said, what, at the 11th hour, that's when that owner of that vineyard came and paid all those servants that penny. All right. And what, those last servants came at what, the 11th hour. And that's when they were getting ready to receive that pay, because when the 12th hour comes, it's over. OK. Matter of fact, those servants came at the 11th hour. The last ones came at the 11th hour. All right. And after that, that's when the owner came. All right. So around that 12th hour, man, that's when the Lord's getting ready to come back. And we are so close to the 12th hour. All of us that's coming in right now, technically are part of the 11th hour. Okay. Even our elders before us, technically, that's around the 11th hour. Okay. You had all the prophets before that were putting in this work, the 10th hour. All right. The 9th hour before that, putting in work. And we're the prophets here in the last days. And we're getting ready to receive the same reward that was promised unto our fathers, which is the kingdom. Because we are our fathers. Okay. So I'm going to end it off on that. Lord's willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem Yahushai, Bahashem Rachakodash. Double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and blessing and many salutations to you elect Akim across the four winds of this earth, pushing this word in sincerity and in truth. Shalom.